So I'm going to shift gear a little bit, talk about some of the immediate harm of AI has brought on some of the individual creators, and then talk a little bit about our project, we call it Glaze, where we try to protect these people, protect artists against generative AI. Right? So specifically, all right, so this is a set. So we have all seen this, right? These models, these AI today, they're able to produce these very incredible artwork. They're not perfect, but what we see, they're good enough to replace a lot of the jobs, a lot of things that human artists traditionally do. And now let's talk about some of the problems, right? So the problem of this model is where it comes from, and it's training data set. And basically, these models are only possible because sometime in the past, AI company decided that all the images on the internet is a fair game for them. Right? They scrape billions of images and train this model. And a big portion of that are copyrighted professional art images shared by creators online. Right? Let me give you one example of this. You may have heard similar stories, so I'm going to fly through this fairly quick. So Kelly McKernan is a professional artist. Right? So ever since she was 5 or 6 in that picture, she started learning art, go to art school, go to art college, finding her own unique art style, and perfecting that style to become professional artists. So a very typical artist kind of experience. And what happened last year is Kelly find that over 50 of her paintings are scraped by one of these data sets, are trained into most of these image generators. Right? And as you expect, there's no constant, no compensation, there's no credit given to Kelly at all. So the only form of credit is actually her name is associated with some of these images in the metadata. And because of that, we can do this, where we can go to one of these models, say, generate me an image in the style of Kelly McKernan. And the model will recognize her name and start outputting very much the same images that she may draw for arbitrary content. Right, so there are a couple images here are Kelly's original, but I bet it's very hard for you to tell which is one is which. So these type of AI mimicry has happened to artists, is happening to artists. It becomes so popular just over the course of last year, it has become its own industry. Right, so there are online platforms that people do this for a living now. So what they do is they go after the art style of specific artists, and they train a customized model, AI model, just to mimic that specific art style. And they post this model online, so that next time if somebody wants a piece of art from one of these artists, they can instead go to these models and it will be much faster, it will be much cheaper to do. Right? So this becomes so bad that many artists today, when they search their name on the internet, the first thing that popped up is no longer their website. Right? It's the link to the model that can copy their style. And of course, they are not making a single penny from other users using these models. Right, so I think we have all seen some of these, but it is really an understatement to say that generative AI has a pretty detrimental effect on individual creators, individual artists. Right, so from some artists we talked to, not going into each one of them, but many are quitting art, are very depressed about this entire space. Right, so these are some results we had, but this is just everywhere on the internet. And it gets really dark, and I'm not going to talk about the details, but there are cases where our students are so depressed that they attempted self-harm. All right, so for the rest of the talk, I'm going to talk a little bit about Glaze. So this is our effort where we try to see whether there are some technical solutions that can potentially help these artists as we wait for regulation to take place. So I just want to quickly talk first about how the project started, kind of where it's going, just to give some context. So we're not artists, we're researchers. So the project actually started with artists emailing us asking for help. Right, so from there, we started engaging with a lot of artists, attending events. And to be honest, we're just horrified by some of the experience and the story that we're hearing that happened to artists. Right, so we started working with artists to build Glaze to really see whether there are ways we can help. And we had a paper on this, but also a news on this got out of a New York Times article. We packaged everything up so people can download this for free on our website to use. And we got around $1.6 million, so a lot of people are using this to protect their individual art. All right, so how does this work? So Glaze works like the following, right? So when there is no protection today, as we said, anybody can go to artist's website, download some images, train a model, and the model is able to produce arbitrary content very much in the same style, try to replace the same artist. Right now with Glaze, before artists post their artwork online, they'll first run through Glaze. And Glaze will analyze the image and add in some small changes. And these changes are hopefully not too visible to human eyes, but they're specially crafted to confuse these AI models. Right? So if somebody were to do the exact same type of mimicry on the glazed version of the same art, I will start putting some random jumbles that artists can specify, I want my style to look like Van Gogh instead. Right? So this way, the art style is protected and safe from AI mimicry. So I'm not going to bore you with how exactly are we going to do this. But what I'm going to say is we are exploiting a fundamental limitation of these models or vulnerability of these AI models. So this is something that people or researcher has identified that model or AI are very subjective to small changes on the input if you carefully craft these small changes. And we have seen this happen to all AI models, and arguably we see it happens more to the more complex and bigger models that we have today. And Glaze effectively just exploit that vulnerability of AI model, try to protect human art from these. All right, so some examples, right? So left are original pieces, right are Glaze versions. So at this resolution, it's very hard to see difference, but if you really zoom in, you will see some artifacts here and there. I'll do a demo later so you can see some of the images afterwards. And again, we went through this, right? So if these are the original art, these are the mimicked art if nobody used any protection and it's very much the same style. And these are, if artists use protection, is a very different style. All right, so as I mentioned before, we packaged everything up as a software released to artists so people can just download for free on our website and use this to protect their art on their local PC, on their MacBook. And I think I'm going to skip this, but we have a lot of positive feedback from artists who really offer tons of their expertise to help different aspects, where there are even artists paid out of their own pockets to sponsor for advertisement for Glaze. But beyond really individual artists, we also speak to a lot of other creators who are interested in Glaze, who are all very concerned about generative AI take their data and replace them. And so there are some initial work in other domains that exploring similar Glaze technique to protect other cases. Also speaking to entertainment companies, it turns out like companies like Disney are also concerned about their IP getting stolen by one of these models. So Glaze may be effective in those cases as well. Also talking to, engage quite a bit with legislators, mostly in the US with the FTC to really kind of push forward to some protection about consumer to protect these artists. All right, so for the last minute of the talk, I just want to quickly mention a follow-up project we did that try to extend Glaze, and we'll call this Nightshade. So in some sense, Glaze works, the goal of Glaze is to protect specific art style, right? So if I protect my art, the worst case can happen to an AI company if you train on this art is that you don't learn the art style, right, or learn something different, which is not terribly for the AI companies because there are so many artists, has so many art already online that is not protected, so it's not too big a problem if they can just learn a specific style. So we think, okay, can we take this one step further? So this new project where if we carefully craft some data and put those online, if I would call these data poison data, and if the AI company accidentally scraped some of these images or some of these data into their training pipeline, and the model will get corrupted in general, not learn anything from these data, but it will start corrupting the overall model as a whole. Right, so let me show you what do I mean by corrupting. So if you go to today's AI, say, generate me a portrait in concept art style, this is something it will give. But once the model trains just a little bit on these poison data that they may accidentally get from online sources, it will start outputting images in a totally different style. Or if you train enough, it will start collapsing as a whole, start outputting random noise that is not reusable. Right? So again, I'm omitting quite a bit of details here, but so the goal of Nightshade or this type of research is really try to prevent AI company from taking data today from the entire internet without asking for any consent. Right? So now there's a good chance that some of these data are protected, are actually malicious, are actually bad for the model. So we'll really push for AI company to potentially work with creators, work with artists to get the data and to compensate the artists in some way. All right, so I'm just going to end the talk here. We also have a website and a Twitter account. I'm going to do a demo, I think, just during the coffee break about Glaze, but also happy to take questions during that coffee break as well. All right, thanks, Sam.